In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a SaaS MVP using vibe coding. And I only say the term vibe coding because that's the term everyone's using, but I personally don't like the term. What I want to show you in this video is how to build a product that you can actually use. And by the end of this video, we will have a working product that you can use, maybe even deploy for other people to use using AI. And so if you're not a software developer, if you don't have any coding skills, you can still use this approach and use the AI tools that are available to build a product or a SaaS or whatever, right? So the first thing I want to start with, as always, is kind of the idea of what we want to build, right? So the first step for every vibe coding project is determining what are we going to try to create here. And so in this video, let's create an app that helps us select a restaurant based on our vibes. Let's call it the vibe eating app, right? So if I just want to come into this app, I want a little form, kind of like what you're seeing on my screen here, where I could just say, hey, I'm feeling a little cozy today and I want something warm and fuzzy. And it suggests a bunch of restaurants based on your vibe or your mood. So first step here, always with any vibe coding project, with any coding with AI project, you first need to flesh out the app a bit, right? So one sentence is not good enough. You can build an app with one sentence. You can one-shot an app, but the best way to go about it is to really build out the idea. So I'm going to start in Gemini Advanced 2.5 Pro. 2.5 Pro is a reasoning model. I've written articles and posted videos about this before. But the idea, the reason I'm doing this is because the reasoning models are thinking models and they are extremely smart and help you build out an idea. So I'm just going to start with a basic prompt and then you're going to see me work through building out this idea with Gemini Advanced. And I'm just going to use my voice to prompt. I want to build a web app where a user comes in, they see a form and they can type in their vibe, how they're feeling. For example, I'm feeling like a warm, fuzzy, night in kind of vibe. And then it recommends restaurants in their location or their city based on that vibe. So I'm using Whisper Flow, which is an app for my Mac where I can just speak and it sort of like writes it in. And then so I'm explaining this idea. And then what I want to do is I want to flesh it out with Gemini. Help me flesh out this idea a bit more. Right? So here I'm just going to ask Gemini to brainstorm with me, work back and forth, and we're going to sort of come up with a really solid idea versus just a sort of fleeting thought in my head. And so you can see Gemini thinking here. What it's doing is it's sort of trying to really understand what I'm trying to say here, identifying the key challenges and so on, the user experience, each component, all of that kind of stuff. And then at the end of it, once it's done thinking, it gives me a full answer. Okay, so core concept, key components and considerations. Let's see. So you've got the core input text, location, manual entry, some filters, the processing and matching restaurant data. It says I need a database of restaurants, and then some matching algorithms, and then the UX. Okay. So what I'm going to say here is I want to try and scope it down. So anytime we build something, we start with the most basic version of it, the MVP. And I'm going to ask it to scope it down to, let's scope it down to a very basic MVP. We allow the user to enter a location and then their vibe and maybe a couple of other filters like price. And then for the data, let's just create dummy data that we can use. So I don't want to use an existing API. That means I'm going to have to sign up for a bunch of APIs. Let's just use dummy data and let's just focus on, say, Vancouver, which is where I am currently. And then, it outputs a bunch of recommendations and it gives me like a little matching score based on my vibe. So I'm asking you to scope it down now, and we're going to basically figure out exactly what that MVP looks like. What does the front end look like, the back end, the database, the logic, all of that, right? And here we go. So we've got the dummy data structure here, vibe tags, front end user interface, result section, back end logic, dummy data, event listener, on submit, yada yada. Great. Okay. So now we've got it down to a very well defined MVP. I'm going to ask it to build me a PRD. So it's a products requirements document, right? Okay, let's build this with a React app using ShadCN for styling and create a PRD for this. And there we go. So it's planned the whole MVP here. We've got a PRD with kind of just giving me the project setup instructions. The project structure goes here. The data and what it looks like goes there. The components are here. And then the logic. And then a full PRD, right? So this, now I have like, again, you've got all the features here, right? So now I have complete PRD with complete instructions of like how to set up the project and so on, right? It's not giving me all the code yet, but I don't want that yet. I just want the PRD. So I'm going to copy all of this PRD. I'm actually just going to start from here. I'll start from here. Okay, I'm going to copy this whole PRD, including these instructions, right? And then I'm going to go into Cursor. So Cursor is my go-to IDE, interactive development environment for building these apps using AI. Now you can do this with Lovable and Replit and Bolt.new, and there's a bunch of others where you can just, it's more of a done for you kind of service, right? So you paste in the PRD into those products, and then it just builds out the whole thing for you. I'm actually going to show you Lovable first. I'll show you Lovable first, and then I'll go back to Cursor just to show you. All right, so I'm in Lovable right now, and I'm just going to paste this entire thing, right? And I'm just going to like straight up tell it all of that. It's going to read all of this, and then it starts to build it out. So it's kind of just like taking everything here and just one-shotting the entire app from this prompt. Now, while it's doing that, let's head over to Cursor and also set up the same thing there. So I'm here in Cursor, and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to give it this massive prompt, and I'm going to ask it to, it should probably, yeah, there you go. So it automatically just starts to set up. And basically what it's doing here is it's going to ask me for validation every single time, right? So it says, can I create this app? Yes. So this is just running the basic create a React app, and it sets up all the documents, and you'll see it's asking me to give it a bunch of stuff here. All right, done. Okay. Boom. So we've got our entire project structure here. It's setting everything up. It's installing all the requirements. All right. So while our project is being built in Cursor, I'm back here in Lovable, and as you can see, it's built the entire thing for me here, right? So you've got Vancouver Vibe Dining. You've got like the little filters here. I can select something. I can say date night, and I can find restaurants, and it finds me a couple of options here, right? So I've got my kind of like basic setup here, and all I did was just prompt it once, and it's built the full app. So with an app like Lovable or Bolt or Replit, all you have to do is just like talk to the AI and ask it to make changes. So let's say I don't like the layout of this homepage. I want the input form to be front and center. And then when you click find restaurants, I want the restaurants to show up below it. And so you just give it instructions like this and sort of just explain what you want. And the more detail you can give it, the better, right? So what it's going to do now is, as you can see, it's working here. And it's essentially just going to take my feedback and sort of rearrange the layout over here. But this goes beyond just like rearranging elements or making or changing the UI. You can go deeper and say, you can add more features to it. You can add some AI stuff to it. You can work with like an external database. So Lovable here has connections, direct integrations with Supabase, which is a database. And so you can say, instead of like the pre-filled data that we have here in our app, you can actually create a database in Supabase and then have it pull that data from Supabase. And then finally, once you're happy with your app here, you can publish it. So it goes onto a live URL where you can use it, your friends can use it. Potentially, if you even wanted to serve it to a broader audience, you could do that, right? You could ask it to create like a login system as well, and just say, hey, add like a sign in system, a profile account, so that we can save restaurants, and then you could build that in, right? So it's just going to take a few minutes here. I'm going to go back into Cursor and see how things are going there. All right. So we're back here in Cursor, and looks like there are some issues here in the main app that it's created. So it's built the full project. It's built all the pages, the components, the data, everything. Similar to what Lovable was doing, Cursor's also been running this in the background, building all of this. But the difference, as you can see here, is Cursor's an IDE, which means I have way more control over the code here. I do have control in Lovable, but over here it's easier because as someone who understands code, I can look at this and I can go, yeah, okay, this is an issue. There's, something is missing here. And so, I can say, I can, figure out what's going on, or I could just have it figure out what's going on and kind of like work it for me, right? So here we have, it's supposed to be pulling in a component called vibe from here. But then our config file is missing some stuff. So it's just going to add something to the config, and then that should kind of fix it right there, right? So things like that, where I can like go in and, fix what's happening. And now it looks like the fix has been made. And so I'm not getting any errors at all. I can actually now launch this app and see how it works. So we're going to go over to the Cursor version of this and see how that's working. All right, so here's what Cursor has given us. So we've got the little app over here. Select our area. Let's go with gas down. Let's just go with cozy. Going to select a couple. Oh, these aren't working, so I need to fix that. But if I can, oh, there we go. So it does work. I can select a bunch of things, but there's something up with the pricing filters here. So here's where the kind of the development differs. So in Lovable, I just say, hey, fix XYZ thing. But the problem with that is if you want to get really specific, it's hard to describe that to Lovable. Now, if you are familiar with code or you can understand how code works, it's easier for you to diagnose these things in Cursor, because invariably these apps are going to get something wrong or make a mistake. So back here in Cursor, I want to look at the main app here. And we have the inputs over here. So I'm just kind of like looking for okay. So this section, right? There's something up with the clicking of the section. And so what I can say here is like, I could just select this one component and add it to my chat. And I can say, can you fix the styling on this section where I select my price range? The check boxes are black. Make them white so I can see my selection. Right, so it's gonna look through it and then kind of just like improve the styling here, and you can see it's got the little styling classes over here. Accept that, and so here we go. We've got our little select button here, so we could just like check these off. Basically, it's white, and when you click on it, it goes black, and you can toggle it on and off, and find your restaurant. Now, the layout as well is kind of weird. It's just sort of on one side into one column. So again, I can just go back. I can either edit the code myself in Cursor, or I could tell Cursor, hey, can you make it so that it sort of takes up the entire screen? So that's what I'm going to do right now. All right, so I'm looking here again. This is my main app area, and I can I'm just looking to see, here we go. We've got the divs. So it's probably something here where it's being pushed into a div on the left. And that's why it is, it's kind of just like to one side. So I think we should probably just remove these divs, and we could just have the H1 here. Can you remove the last div here? Yeah. Let's just try that. And so now we've got it right in the center. So I come to my page, Vancouver Vibe Dining. I can select places, and then select my pricing range and find restaurants. And there I go. I find a little restaurant there. Now, this is the most basic version, right? In both cases, and I'm going to show you the new Lovable version, by the way. Let's switch over there. And so here's what we got with Lovable. Same thing basically. And we get the restaurants at the bottom here. So I've centered everything and I've got everything to the bottom. Now, this is kind of our MVP, right? This is what we said we wanted. We built a PRD with it in Gemini. We loaded the PRD into the apps, and both of them have built the apps from scratch. And so again, like I said, this is where the sort of development styles start to differ. So in Lovable, I'm just going to keep describing what I want here, and I'm going to say, add more information to this card here and so on. And in Cursor, I can actually just go look at the code, specifically say, here, take this piece of code, do something to it, add this new thing. And I can continue working that way for both things. So the next step here is to start to add real data, right? And I'm not going to show you how I do that in this particular video, because that's going to mean, getting APIs and stuff. But essentially what we want to do here is we kind of want to maybe either you can connect Superbase and then you can build a database. So you can go scrape a bunch of restaurant data, put that into Superbase, and then use the app. So you could tell Lovable to, connect to Superbase and sort of pull the data from there. If you're working in Cursor, again, you set it up manually in Superbase, or you can have Cursor do it for you if you use MCPs in Cursor. Have it set up the database in Superbase, and then you can add the data there. And the other thing you want to do is you want to use Gemini, continue to use Gemini to sort of figure out how to further develop the app. So I'm going to go back to Gemini and show you how I do that. All right, so back here in Gemini, I'm going to tell it that I've set up the basic app, and now I want to use real world data. What should I do? And so I'm just asking Gemini for how I set up real world data, right? So we've got the dummy data in there. It's in both apps, in Lovable and in Cursor. Let's actually create some real world data and see how we do it, right? So Gemini is kind of thinking, it's focusing on APIs. It's going to give us some instructions on what APIs we can use and how to set that up. And again, I'm just going to take these instructions and go back into either Lovable or Cursor and add the instructions there, right? So Yelp API, Google Places API, Foursquare. So it recommends Yelp. Introduce a simple backend. So it's going to create a route here, API restaurants, and set up the backend, right? So again, what I can do is I can go create my Yelp API, get my API keys, and then I can take these implementation steps. So I'll obtain this. Then I can just copy this, right? And I can paste this into Lovable or Cursor and say, can you build this for me, right? And so set up the backend, set up tweak the front end to use that backend. And then it's going to start to read real data from the Yelp API, right? And then finally, the last thing you want to do when you're building these apps is, so you get the MVP, you create the front end, you do some, back and forth, you design the front end the way you like it. Then you start to set up your back end, and then you connect the front end to the back end. And then the final part is just do a bunch of testing. So go through the app, try it out yourself, run it on your local server. And then finally, push it to GitHub so that it's stored in a repository somewhere, and then you can actually deploy it online. So you can directly deploy it from GitHub into, say, Vercel if you want, or some other hosting platform, and then you'll have an actual URL that you can go and try to use the app or share it with your friends in public. So hopefully that helped. I know this tutorial was a little short, But if I showed you the exact full thing, it's going to be 3 hours long. Instead, I've created a blog post on my website. I'll add the link below, but you can go check out the blog post, read the full thing. It's got screenshots, it's got prompts, it's got a whole bunch of stuff, and just follow along there and build your app. And honestly, the best way to learn this is just to get started doing it. So go do it yourself, try it out, and then let me know in the comments what you think.